You're listening to Talking Elvis with Vince Wright and Ian Gray.
Now we've got a little treat. We've got Victoria Page Meyerink, the little girl from that scene. She's here with us today. Hello there, Victoria.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
Fine, thanks. So pleased you could be with us today. Really interested to hear your views on the Elvis world. We get everybody else's, and we seem to get a lot of the whitewash stories or the people who are just out for sensationalism. But I just like to hear the kids' view. I think that would be really nice to see for a change of how it all went on. So let's think. Going way back when, how did you get into the entertainment business?
I think it was a natural. I wanted to do what my mom did, and she hosted the Today Show before Barbara Walters in New York years ago. I mean, this is the late 50s.
Brilliant.
And she's a pretty well-known actress, and she's still around, but I wanted to follow in her footsteps. I thought that was fun. I loved going to the sets. And when I was about 2.5 or 3, I was chosen. I went on an interview with her, and the producers saw me and rewrote the part of a small boy in her upcoming show in Vancouver, Canada, called Littlest Hobo, for me. And they asked her, would I do it? Would she let me do it? And she said, absolutely, if Victoria wants to. The Danny Kaye Show came about by me singing Hans Christian Andersen in the supermarket shopping cart. I was always singing. I knew the whole score. I loved it. And Danny was evidently looking for a kid to add to the show. But a friend who overheard the singing in the shopping cart asked my mom, bring Victoria in. You know, they're reading kids the next week. And she did. And I still remember to this day the whole interview. And I remember the first time I saw Kay. He poked his head outside of the door. We started playing peekaboo. He came out. He took my hand. We went in the room together, and they sent everyone else home. That was it. At some point, when I was about 7.5, casting directors called and producers called and said they want Victoria for Speedway. And that's how I got Speedway and got the pleasure of knowing Elvis.
All right. So was that just an offer to your mother, and again, she was sort of managing you and said, this is the right deal?
Well, certainly. I mean, yes, she was overseeing my career, but I did, of course, have agents and managers and what have you. And through the various sources, the script came, and she read it, and she thought it was a sweet role, being Ellie Easterlake, you know, William Shallard's daughter. And
well, I mean, that's a good pedigree as well, isn't it? Straight away of who else is in the film.
It is. And we've got Nancy Sinatra and Bill Bixby, who I already had a huge crush on because I knew him. I'd been to the set of My Favorite Martian, which was very popular at the time.
Oh, I know that one, yes.
I'd met him several times and just adored him. So I was thrilled to be on the set with Elvis and Bill. In fact, Nancy stayed very much to herself, and Bill was very outgoing. I usually had lunch with Bill and Elvis. It's funny, we'd always go to lunch. We'd walk to the commissary, and Elvis was always so gracious with his fans, walking with them on the lot and stopping to sign and answer questions and shake hands. And we'd go to lunch, and one day I remember the two of them asking me, okay, if you had to pick one of us right now, which one would you marry? And I couldn't decide. I wanted to be so diplomatic because I really was in love with Bill.
Yes.
And I said, I love you both. I couldn't possibly decide, you know. But there were no really, I don't even remember the entourage being around. Elvis was very accessible. We always were sitting next to each other in our director's chairs, and I was always making these little books and giving them to him, and he'd sit in color with me, or we'd go to my trailer and feed this little kitten that I was keeping alive. Its mother had died, and that's one of the famous stories is we were feeding it every 2 hours with a little and an eyedropper. Yeah. And I told Elvis about it, of course, and he loved animals, and he came to see the kitten, and I just remember him holding this little rat-like creature in his big hand and feeding it.
Oh.
It was lovely. It was really lovely. He's such a gentleman, so gracious and well-mannered, and I don't remember throngs of people, and I never met the Colonel. As far as I know, they weren't around then. When I go to the Elvis Fest, I recently did Collingwood, and I love a lot of the tribute artists, or, you know, the impersonators, but some of them, most of them, focus on the jumpsuit years, the Vegas years, that certain look. And that's not the Elvis I knew at all.
No.
And that's not the way he was singing or dancing really back in the Speedway days. So I always appreciate the ones who I think are truer to his persona and capture his soul as well as his voice and mannerisms and look, and don't take it over the top, but are truly more like the Elvis I knew.
That's good. Did you ever sing with him? I mean, not on film, but I mean around, as you were a singer, were you singing your Hans Christian Andersen songs together?
Oh,
Or
sure I was. He was always humming and toe tapping and humming when he walked by, and I'm sure I joined in. I mean, we just had a lot of fun, and
that's the main thing.
there's a great still of us behind the scenes with a plate of saltine crackers and milk. And it was a behind the scenes shot. It wasn't a still from a scene specifically. And I remember the two of us were saying, this is sort of a ridiculous snack. It doesn't look very healthy. And Elvis thought there should be peanut butter.
Good move.
So, but a lovely, lovely, lovely man. Find us at www.talkingelvis.co.uk or Facebook or YouTube or Spotify. In fact, any place you get your podcasts.
And let's see, we filmed it all on the MGM lot with the exception of a little bit at the Ontario racetrack.
I was going to say that those scenes there, they actually were there, were they? So you're on the back of a truck, aren't you? I think with Nancy Sinatra and waving them all on, aren't you, at that point?
Right. Actually, two racetracks. I believe they did a unit that went to Florida and shot part of it there, the actual racing. But all of us being on the sidelines and flagging them and waving them on and all that, that was shot in Southern California, not far from MGM Studios.
Oh, brilliant. And the director, Norman Torog, what was
Lovely
he?
Man.
What was he like? Yeah.
Very sweet, very kind, very patient. And, it was a very happy set. I credit always the leads and the directors and producers for setting the tone. And it was a very happy set. Rehearsals were fun, and if somebody messed up, it was fine. It was relaxed, and Elvis was always punctual and on time. He knew his marks. He knew the songs, and a lot was done to playback.
Yes.
And a lot of the scenes were rehearsed. Like Your Time Hasn't Come Yet, Baby was actually rehearsed on a separate soundstage for about a week prior to the filming.
To get the choreography right, is it?
A little bit of choreography and the playback, but we were having more fun with that. And he was such a pro and so happy. So it was one of the happiest sets I've ever been on. I don't remember any kind of, strife or stress or any kind of negativity. Really a happy set. And, during Speedway is when he found out that Priscilla was expecting.
Oh, right. So was it kind of announced to you all there and then?
He did. In fact, I finally had the chance to meet Priscilla just earlier this month, and I was able to share with her what happened that day because I asked her, I don't recall you being on the set. I would have remembered meeting you. And she said, no, I wasn't there. And I told her what he did, and that was that he assembled the cast and crew, and he got up on a pile of apple boxes and announced to everybody, Priscilla's pregnant. We're going to have a baby. I'm so excited. And then he pointed down to me and said, and I want a little girl just like you. And it made headlines. Papers came out with it. Back then, it wasn't, instantaneous on Facebook. It took a week to actually get a photo and get it in the papers and what have you. But eventually stories came out with that whole headline, I want a little girl just like you. And I just remember the rest of the shoot. That's all he could think about. When he wasn't working, it was the baby, and he was so happy and looking forward to that. And then all the little books I was making for the baby. And it was a very happy time, I think.
Oh, that's
I'm
wonderful.
not sure he loved making those movies. I think Speedway was one of the last in the MGM contract era.
Yeah.
I think there was only one done that he did after ours. But I think he genuinely had a great time.
Oh, that's brilliant. You want to think of him as happy on the set because you hear so many reports that he was sick of this, that, and the other, and it's nice to think that he wasn't just going through the motions; he was having a good time at the same time.
Other mementos, gosh, in later years he'd send me albums and sign them with notes from him.
So you kept in touch all the way through, did you?
A little bit, not as much with Kay. Kay was a very very big part of my life until his death. We were very close. Elvis being in Memphis or Vegas, he wasn't in town really, and there were a couple of attempts to get us together over the years. I remember one in particular from when I happened to be in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it was just a couple hours drive over to Memphis, and a tornado hit, and that was the end of that.
Oh dear.
So I think we would have stayed in touch had there been closer proximity, but he was so busy and he was so huge, and I was honored that he remembered and thought of me and sent me albums at all and notes. That was very sweet.
That's brilliant. Well, every time he looked at Lisa, he must have thought of it then, hadn't it?
I don't know. I hope so. I know he was really, really looking forward to that. So he did get a little girl, and I guess he got his wish. So
Talking Elvis is a new podcast.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I knew who the Beatles were. I knew who Elvis was. But I had worked with greats. I mean, I'd met Nat King Cole.
Oh, wow.
So many great people, and Danny Kaye being a very close friend at the time. I just wasn't, and Rock Hudson. I worked with Rock Hudson. So I wasn't fazed. To me, Elvis was my professional acting buddy. I remember meeting him, and I remember seeing Bill Bixby and being so excited and giving him a hug, and then turning around and shaking Elvis's hand, saying, "Hello, Mr. Presley." Very formal little kid that I was. I always called him Mr. Presley. I never called him Elvis.
Oh, that sounds brilliant.
Never, but I was not fazed. I don't think I understood what an impact they were having on the universe.
No, well, that's it. You wouldn't know till later. So after that, you went on to other films. I know I've managed to look around and get hold of a few. I've seen that Betty turns out all right in Travel. Was it Time Travelers? But poor old Vicky, the character, doesn't end so good in Joyride. So,
those were different little films and TV movies, and
brilliant.
And
yes,
I did tons of television and a couple of other films, and then some health matters took me out of the loop completely when I was about 13 for a couple of years, and when I came back, I really didn't pursue acting all that much. I'd always been an excellent student, but I basically focused on my studies. And then when I was 18, I actually met Lawrence Foldis, who is a director, writer, and youngest producer on record. He produced his first film at 18.
Wow.
And he came up with the bright idea as he saw me on crutches saying, "Well, you can't act right now. Why don't you produce?" And I thought about it and said, okay. And we ultimately got married, but we formed a partnership, and we worked together for about 30 years. And I produced feature films. I'm still in production, but I've gone back to music, which I absolutely love. But it's a combination of film and live event and music, and that is that I've teamed up with 3-time Grammy nominee David Arkenstone.
That's brilliant. So what have we got in the future with conventions? Is there anything booked at the moment, or are we just hanging on to 18 now and the book and everything?
I think that's all going to pretty much explode in 2018, but I certainly love to do it. So, I mean, I've done an Elvis cruise a couple of years ago, and EPE is always very generous. They frequently bring me back to Elvis Week. I'm not there, obviously, now.
Yeah.
And, there's the Three Little Sleepyheads number that was cut from Speedway.
Yes. Did they film that?
Oh, yeah, we filmed it. It was cut.
Oh, that's good then.
I'm actually trying to locate the footage because I think that would be great to bring that back for 2018.
Oh, I mean, I just think with that we could have you doing the narration for the DVD.
That would be fantastic. I think it's Turner now, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
I've gone through so many different people, but I think we're down to Turner at this point. So
yes.
If we can find the footage, I will resurrect it because I think that would be great.
Well, you're the person to know. You've got the contacts, haven't you? I'd just like to say thank you for your time. You've been amazing to give us this interview, and all the fans out there listening to sort of celebrate Elvis tonight. We're not trying to mourn or make it a glum thing. We want to celebrate the man, the music, and all things Elvis.
Well, thank you for allowing the memories of such a gracious person to survive. I'm so glad that we're keeping his memory alive in such a wonderful way. And I'm glad he lives on, in our hearts, always.
Well, I'm going to finish off. I've opened a very special bottle of single malt, and I'm going to raise my glass to you and say thank you very much.
I toast you back with a morning cup of coffee.
Thank you very much. Goodbye now.
Thanks, Vince. We'll talk soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Talk about the good times with Talking Elvis.